Any excuse to get out of the office on a beautiful summer's morning, I'm on top of it, and there's no better place to be on this beautiful summer morning than this spectacular view with Omi Gardens in the background. And my guest today is just celebrated her first year anniversary as the person in charge of the Chelan-Douglas Land Trust, and they just closed a deal last winter with the city of Wenatchee and the Omi family to, well, take care of this beautiful piece of real estate. I don't want to screw up your last name, Hanne, because I know it's new.
Hanne Bosket,
Hanne
Executive Director of the Chelan-Douglas Land Trust.
Thanks for taking time out.
Yeah.
And before this interview is over, I want to know where I can get me one of those hats.
Yeah. It's a common request.
You're just a year into the job now.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's kind of funny. They did a nationwide search to find a replacement for the new executive director, and they came right back home to you.
Yeah.
So how's the first year going? Talk about it.
It's going great. It's been a big job to step into. I worked at the Land Trust from about 2013 to 2023. I then stepped away and worked for another local nonprofit doing some research work to benefit the Land Trust. And when I saw this job opening come up, I said, you know, I gotta throw my hat in the ring. I love that organization too much not to. And in that first year, we've engaged in a capital campaign. We're on the road to update our strategic planning process. We've been continuing to build out some trails that were planned for, and continued with land conservation projects in a wide variety of areas in Chelan and Douglas counties. So it's been busy, but we have a great staff. We were able to staff up and retain our staff, and so that's been just, you know, I'm the chief staff support person. That's my role.
And a great board of directors.
Yes, we have an excellent board. We're getting more diverse with our skill set and our perspectives that we bring onto that board, and they really help guide the direction of the organization and make sure that we're aligned with our community.
There were folks, naysayers 40 years ago when the Chelan-Douglas Land Trust fired up, said this is a pig in a poke. Yeah. They got no money. They don't have a budget. Yeah. They're wrong.
Yeah. We stand on the shoulders of everyone who came before us. I mean, we are one of the institutions that's woven into the fabric of this community, providing public services in land conservation for ecological values and wildlife, but also for public access, which is something we're really known for in the Wenatchee Valley. But that's even spreading into Cashmere and Leavenworth as well. So I think we really feel a role here as a land manager, but also as a community organization, and we can be responsive and nimble as a nonprofit as well. And we've built a stable financial base of operations as well. So we're very fortunate to be so well supported and loved by our community.
When people think of the Chelan-Douglas Land Trust, at least here in the Wenatchee Valley, they think of the great natural areas that you saved with acquisitions and partnerships with various agencies and individual property owners to save the west side of the valley. The people were a little nervous about what happened on the east side as the developments began to climb up towards Fancher Heights. They didn't want that to happen to the west side. And that was what a lot of the people associate with what you guys have been able to do to save the natural beauty of the west side of the valley. But it's more than that. You've been involved in places all over Chelan and Douglas County that don't necessarily mean the Wenatchee Valley, like the White River, for instance. You just had an acquisition there not long ago.
Yeah, we acquired a couple of new properties right along the White River corridor, and that's in our riparian property protection program of the Land Trust, and that is really to support salmon habitat recovery in these key waterways and tributaries into the Columbia. Those have their own specific funding sources and project partners that then come in and actually do the restoration projects on the properties that we acquire. That's just a whole other kind of facet of what the Land Trust does outside of public access close to home for folks. But those properties are also open to public access, and we're trying to do our best to kind of plan for that and anticipate what that's going to mean as the interest in river recreation grows in our area.
How do these partnerships, these ad hoc marriages, work out? I mean, for instance, we used the White River acquisition from not long ago. Who approached who? How does that work? Or do you look at Google Earth and said, hey, that's right up our alley? How does that thing work?
Yes, we always look at Google Earth or like a county GIS interactive map to find out who we need to talk to. We use a variety of criteria. We have an internal conservation criteria that looks at certain things that we need to meet with a conservation project in order for us to engage with it. A lot of times it does come down to funding. We don't have a war chest full of funds necessarily to just throw at any piece of property that we may want to protect. So we try and align that funding, and that's a lot of what those partnerships hinge on, is leveraging these partnerships to bring different funding sources that are unique to each partner, whether it's governmental, like the City of Wenatchee and the Land Trust protecting this lookout property that we're standing on and the legacy of the foothills there, or whether it's project partners like Chelan County Natural Resources or Cascade Fisheries or Cascadia Conservation District to do some of that riparian protection. And then we work, with like the NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, to do a lot of protection in Douglas County of working ranch lands out there. So it's really piecing together the funding quilts to make these deals happen, and then also what does the long-term management look like of that property, because that's our wheelhouse, is perpetuity. So we're in it for the long haul and have to think about that as well.
And the west side of the valley falls within the City of Wenatchee's growth management area, and Dave Erickson, Parks and Rec guy at the City of Wenatchee, thinks you guys are the bee's knees, because they don't really have to do this, but they want to help you guys out, and that's been a great partnership.
It has, and we think Dave Erickson is the bee's knees. We have a joke in the Land Trust that succession planning usually focuses internally on an organization, but we're always very keen to know about succession planning for Dave Erickson. Not that we are interested in him leaving anytime soon, but he is really important, and we've found a great partner there in applying for funding and making things happen in the foothills.
There's a reason that Hannah and I are standing here. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But speaking of the foothills, is there anything left in that regard as you've been continuing to work with the various agencies to acquire property and build out trails for recreation and wildlife usage on the west side of the valley? Is that pretty much tapped out? Where are we with that?
I think it's important to mention that the Land Trust isn't an anti-development organization. We think that there's a right place for everything in this region that benefits our communities and our way of life. So there probably are areas in the foothills that could support more development. There's also areas that are not identified as not great for development. I think our focus in the future is certainly on managing what we have, and future land conservation will build on those areas that are already protected. So using those as a seed and then building out from them to add more public access. That way there's connectivity. So we're really looking at connectivity to public lands or other open spaces that has more habitat value and more potential for public access that's appropriately balanced with that habitat value.
And this project that we're sitting on right here, the Lookout Natural Area, this took a long time, a lot of give and take and back and forth, but come February of earlier this year, the deal is done. You and the city got together. We're standing in the middle of 135 gorgeous acres. This is, again, a fantastic partnership between private ownership, governmental entities, and your organization. How did this whole thing fall together, the Lookout?
Well, as is the case with many land acquisition projects that the Land Trust engaged in, it takes a long time, sometimes a decade, sometimes 2 decades. And it really starts and ends with building relationships and trust with everyone who's at the table. Sometimes we reach out to people, sometimes people approach the Land Trust and say, hey, I have this idea about conserving a property, help me think through it. In this case, it became clear that this would be a competitive project to protect, i.e. acquire, with the city partnership to build on the legacy of the foothills. And so we approached the city about that and put together a grant application. So half of the cost of acquiring this came from a city grant that they received from the state, and the Land Trust's commitment was that we would raise the other half, because those are match grants, 50% match grants. So we raised an early $800,000 as part of our Lookout Natural Area campaign to be able to acquire the property here in February of 2026, like you said. And then we have submitted another grant, the city has, for $1 million, and the Land Trust is, as part of its capital campaign, raising that $1 million match here locally. And we're jazzed about how our community shows up. I mean, our donor base is primarily primary residents in Chelan and Douglas counties, and people see the value in the work we do, and they support it in their own backyard, which is just such a cool thing that it's locally grown here, which is really
kudos to the Olney family.
Yeah.
Owners of the vast majority of the tracts that were sitting here. They could have just said, "Ah, to heck with it. I'm just going to sell out to some private developer and let them build mansions in this area, but they said no.
Yes, and you know, another really great thing about the Omi family, they've been very consistent about wanting to conserve this. They also were really consistent about wanting to acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Wenatchee Piscosa people, and so they worked to engage the tribes, and the Land Trust has a partnership with the Colville Confederated Tribe, and they had some tribal members out here, Sharon Covington and Ernie Brooks, and they took a walk on the property, and they came up with the name Lookout. So that is actually a name from our partners at the Colville Confederated Tribes for how the Wenatchee people view this place here.
And now Suzanne has her work cut out for her.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. But we've got, like I said, we have a great community. They see the value in the work. We're building on the proven track record of success of the foothills. So I think the messaging is pretty clear.
In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to stop right here, and when we come back, the lady who's in charge of getting people to open up your checkbooks, but don't worry, she's good at it. We'll have that interview coming up. You're watching Wake Up Wenatchee Valley. We'll be right back.